Hi, I'm Kara Burns, and I was released from federal prison in 2013. But I'm going to start my story way back when I was a kid. My childhood was pretty normal. I remember being poor when we were growing up, but there wasn't a lot of significant trauma that I can really blame how I got so off track. It was normal, except my parents were divorced, which is normal. I was about 15 or 16 when I started drinking heavily, and I would say there was one event that caused me to significantly get off track. My mom sent me to go live with my dad and my stepmom in Colorado from Texas, and I was with them for about 8 months, and it didn't work out. And my dad sent me back to go live with my mom. And that was a traumatizing moment in my life because what was communicated to me or in my 16-year-old brain was that I wasn't good enough or lovable enough to keep. And that wasn't, looking back on it now, I see it differently, but back then that's how it felt. And I fulfilled that destiny. It was the perfect fire kindling for me to really dive deeply into my addiction. I drank heavily. That led to drug use, specifically cocaine use in my late teen years. That progressed to meth by the time I was 21, and then I was shooting meth by the time I was 22. That period of my life was very dark. I was in and out of county jail constantly and homeless and always losing my stuff, and I certainly wasn't employed. I couldn't hold a job. My teeth had started to rot, and it just seemed like no matter what, I would get out of jail and go back to the same people doing the same things every single time. One thing changed for me when I was 24, though. I was arrested, and I was pregnant. So it was very good that I was arrested then. And it was just enough of an opportunity to maybe make some changes in my life. And both me and my daughter's father got clean and lived with his mother. And we were able to stay clean and started to raise our daughter. The challenge for me throughout that time, though, was my brain told me that I could drink. And so I drank throughout that period of time. My relationship with my daughter's father didn't work out, and we went through a divorce. And I lacked the coping skills to be able to make it through that. And I was in a bar one day, and I just didn't want to be drunk. And so I got high on meth. Off to the races I went again. I lost my job and started working for the guy that I was dating at the time, selling meth. Going through years of that, I eventually was federally indicted by the federal government for conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine. My charge carried a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years. Something profound happened to me when I was looking at a 10-year sentence in federal prison. I realized I didn't want to live that life anymore, and I really started to drill down on who God was and what that relationship looked like. And I will say that that's definitely the beginning of my new life, was that time period. I worked very hard while I was in county jail and Shaved My Head for Kids with Cancer, and wrote a book with some other inmates that were in the county jail, and it was focused on helping young kids not make the same bad choices that we had made. So by the time I went to sentencing, my judge could see that I had changed, and she gave me a sentence variance down to 63 months. And I don't know very many people who are happy when they get sentenced to federal prison, but I was, because I knew that that was my second chance, and I ran with it. I started to prepare for my release and going through interview skills, and I had been dreaming about what it would be like to be released from prison for like 2.5 years. And in my mind, it was going to be this great thing, and it was going to be wonderful. Because who doesn't want to get out of prison, right? It wasn't. The day that I was released from federal prison was not the dream that I had thought and built it up to be in my mind. They put me on a bus, and I was bused down to Fort Collins and had to shortly transfer down to Denver and had no means to do so. The thing that really nobody tells you that I had to figure out the hard way was I had nobody. I couldn't go back to those same old people. And, obviously in treatment they say, you just have to watch your people, places, and things. And I get that on an intellectual level, but on the ground, when you have nothing and nobody, it's so easy to go back to what you know. It's so hard to do something that you don't know where the road is going to take you, and it's completely lonely. Nobody's saying, hey, I've been where you've been before. I certainly didn't have that when I was released from prison. It was a complete struggle, and I was released to a federal halfway house in Denver, and the environment was very hard. It is co-ed, and so you're housed with people who are harder than I was. They didn't make the same choices that I was making. The challenging part about living in a halfway house is now, you're lumped up with people who are more than likely going to go back to prison. Statistically, half of us go back in the first year. So they're doing things that are going to take them back to prison, and I'm trying to do things that are going to take me out and away from that life. And it's so hard because nobody is, explaining, the ins and outs or how to make it. It's just, go. And I understand firsthand why half of us go back. I can't even believe that the numbers are even that good. There's 10,000 people a week. I'll say it again. There's 10,000 people a week that are released from prison in this country. That's 650,000 people a year. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people that don't know a way out. I did make it through my halfway house time and was able to finally secure an apartment, but again, it was bear after bear, and there was no one coming back into that halfway house and sharing that we could make it or that we could make it out. I met Jenny with No More Locked Doors at an event that we were both speaking at about a year ago. And I'd like to share that what she is doing is amazingly impactful in this community. She is bridging a gap in services that desperately needs to be bridged. There needs to be people and services in this community that care enough to the point that someone can be cared about the day that they're being released from prison, because that's the day that it matters. Being told, hey, you're worthy, I know you can do this, and I believe in you. Nothing can compare with someone telling someone else that, and a woman telling another woman that. If I could have heard that, I wonder how it would have changed the struggle for me. I am very passionate about reentry and speaking into women's lives. I go back into the halfway house that I was released from 5 years ago to share my story of triumph, to share my all the things that I've been blessed with. I was blessed with new teeth. I have a job that's wonderful. I've bought a condo. I have amazing people in my life today because I've stepped outside of my comfort zone and connected with people, and those new associations and those new people have changed my entire life. People like Jenny have changed my entire life. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the work that she's doing in this community because she's really making a difference.